On today's show, the Hawks get back-to-back wins and a weekend sweep after a victory up in the nation's capital. We'll get into all of what transpired in the game, the debut of some new guys, Trae Young's dominance, and more, and all that is coming up.
You are Locked On Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 1907 of the Locked On Hawks podcast. I am your host, Brad Rowland, coming to you on a Saturday evening into Sunday. And today's podcast is brought to you by the folks at FanDuel Sportsbook. And right now, if you're a new customer at FanDuel, you get $150 in terms of dollars in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins at FanDuel. I also want to encourage you at the top of the podcast to make us your first listen each and every day here at Locked On Hawks. Check us out and subscribe to the show anywhere you find your podcast. That includes Apple and Spotify. We are also on YouTube on the video side. Please like this video as you are watching it. And also, please subscribe and tell your friends and family about this podcast. It's been very busy on the pod in recent days with the deadline and all of that. It's our fourth show in the last 48 hours, which is not usually what happens here. But hey, we've been busy. I think it's like 7 or 8 shows in the last 5 or 6 days now. But plenty to get into on what became a 125-111 win for the Hawks up in Washington, D.C. on this Saturday. It was marked by the debuts of 3 new players, Caris LeVert, Georges Niang, and Terance Mann. Also, the Hawks were favored in this game for the first time in a long time. In fact, they were underdogs in 7 straight games. They won a couple of those, but they were underdogs in 7 games in a row until tonight when they were favored and they ended up covering the spread. It was a comfortable win. It was not completely dominant the entire way through. In fact, the Hawks were actually down by 7 points at one point in the first half. They were up 5 at halftime after a late push. Overall, they had a 34-12 run from the end of the first half to the beginning of the second half to kind of take control of the game. They had a 41-point third quarter to kind of really break away. And by the way, in the middle of that was Georges Niang going nuclear for a few minutes we'll get into later on. It got a little bit dicey in the fourth. The lead was down to 7 at one point, relatively late, but it was never completely in doubt necessarily. It wasn't comfortable, but they did win it in a semi-comfortable fashion by 14 points. And look, there was a lot to get to here. If you missed it, I talked about the deadline and the fallout and the trades, my evaluations. All of that is on this podcast feed. And I definitely encourage you. It's all relevant still right now to listen to the last 3 or 4 shows about the deadline. In the meantime, though, the Hawks did play very well at times in this game and overall played more than well enough to win. I think the offense was definitely the lead story for me. And really, Trae Young was just absolutely dominant for large portions of this game. He ends up with 35 points. On really strong efficiency as well to go along with 14 assists. And that was with Trae wasn't exactly dominant in the fourth quarter of this game. But in the first 3 quarters, I think he had 33 and 13 after 3 quarters. That tells the story to some degree on its own. And by the way, just to give the number, a 63% true shooting mark in this game for Trae. But here's the big one. The Hawks were plus 36 in his minutes in this game across 35 minutes. That means they were also minus 22 without him in the game. But when he was on the floor, they were in total control. And basically, the Wizards had no answers at all for Trae Young in this game. But even beyond that, the Hawks had really good balance in their secondary guys. A point I want to make now that I'll probably make again later in this game, it was a weird spot for Atlanta in that you got, because of injuries, it's a back-to-back. You do want fresh legs, all those things. You make a trade, actually 2 trades, of course. You bring in 3 guys. They're all veterans. LeVert, Niang, and Mann have all been on good teams for a long time, but they came in without a single practice. Not even a game, not a single practice, because the Hawks have a back-to-back. You don't practice when you have a back-to-back. You might have a small shoot-around, but that's it. And they all had to play real minutes in this game. And there was some moments when it was definitely clunky, and it is hard even for pros to come in and play when you don't have any familiarity. Like the Hawks played lineups tonight, basically the entire game that had never played with each other at any point. Obviously, LeVert and Niang played together in Cleveland. Mans played with Keaton Wallace, who hadn't played in this game. But anyway, it was a little bit clunky at times, but the Hawks did enough. And they had 7 guys with 9 points or more. Good balance, and Trae leading the way at the top of things. They had 118 offensive rating in the game, which isn't like super elite, but certainly is very, very good. And really, it was well above 120, which is more than 1.2 points per possession for most of this game until the fourth quarter. It was a little bit of prevent mode down the stretch, but until then, the numbers were really good for the offense. They had, as a team, 60% true shooting in the game, which is very strong. They were 18 of 44 from 3. Turns out it's much easier to win games when you shoot well from three, as I've said many times on this podcast in the past. The weird thing, though, was that they were 58% on twos, which is actually really good, but it was a total roller coaster to get there. In the first half, the Hawks could not make a shot inside the arc. They shot 43% from two in the first half. And if you don't know this, just kind of the baseline is the low 50s is kind of the league average mark on twos. So 43% for a half is really bad on twos. In the second half, they were 17 of 25, which is 68% on twos. So it was night and day, and a lot of that kind of led to part of why they were able to run this game away in the second half. Also, though, a weird stat, the Hawks in the last two games, which they won both of, to be fair, a sweep over the weekend, Friday and Saturday, in about a 24-hour period, the Hawks were 10 of 38 on floater range shots. And the floater range is between like the 4-foot area and like 12 or 13 feet, basically. That's a terrible number, 26%. They were able to win both games, but that should bounce back. And in theory, with that coming up, it's probably good that we're able to actually win a couple games. Obviously, three-pointers are more important than making floaters, but that will come up, and they were still able to get some wins, which is definitely very helpful along the way. Here is the craziest stat of the night for the Hawks offense. They had 36 assists in the game. That is obviously quite excellent. It's their third most in a game this year. That speaks for itself. But here's the crazy stat. They set their franchise record for the Hawks. And if you don't know this, the Hawks have been around for a very long time, dating back to St. Louis. It's been a franchise for a very, very long time. Franchise record with 26 games this year with 30 assists or more. Now, part of that is the fast pace of the league. I get all that, but the Hawks have a ton of those games, and it is absolutely wild to set a season-long franchise record with 29 games to go in the year. Like, they're going to have more of these. They're going to shatter this record for 30 assist games in a season. It helps to have Trae Young, who's leading the league in assists, but it wasn't only Trae. V. Krejci had 7 in this game. Dyson had 4, Niang 3, Okongwu 3, Mann 3, balanced passing, really good ball movement most of the night, and encouraging stuff there on the offensive end of the floor. And last thing on the offense, only 12 turnovers in the game. That's the way it's supposed to work if you're the Hawks. I think Trae had 5 or 6, but when you have that much usage, it's totally fine on 5 or 6, especially when you have 14 assists. And the rest of the guys were all low turnover guys in this game. No one other than Trae had more than 2, which is how it's supposed to work. Your star player has a lot of turnovers sometimes because if you look at the league leaders in turnovers, they're all star players. That's the way that works, generally speaking. But if everybody else takes care of the ball and your star does star things, it tends to run well. So there you go. Defensively, kind of weird. They had a very good defensive night by the stats, a 104 defensive rating. But quite honestly, it was a little bit clunky in my watching of this game multiple times now. I think Quinn acknowledged it kind of in the post game about how new players. He didn't say this specifically, but he referenced like kind of the it's a little bit different for the new guys defensively. That's where you kind of see the connectivity stuff. It's sometimes subtle, but like breakdowns and guys not knowing where to be. Quinn even said like some of these guys are used to. In fact, I think all 3 of them really, Mann, LeVert, and Niang are used to this year playing with like dominant rim protectors. The Cavs have both Jared Allen and Evan Mobley, and the Clippers, while he's not a household name, Ivica Zubac has been playing incredible basketball and is a legitimate 7-foot mammoth rim protector in LA this year. And the Hawks don't really play that way. They play much more of a perimeter style. They switch more. They're also just like more aggressive in their coverages. They're not playing straight drop coverage, and those guys are used to playing more drop coverage. So it's going to be a little bit of adjustment there. They can do it, certainly, but at the same time, it was a little bit clunky. And by the way, Washington did shoot 9 of 36 from 3 in this game, 25%. Atlanta did force 18 turnovers, which is a good number, but only 6 of them were live balls. So some of that was Washington just kind of kicking the ball around a little bit. Jordan Poole was kind of Jordan Poole-y in this game. Let's just say that, and we'll leave it there for now. The only kind of real big issue I thought, though, was the defensive glass, particularly in the first half. They did lose that battle consistently in this game. But I will say also this, on the more positive side, Washington's like kind of late comeback bid was mostly, not all, but mostly pushed by like some contested jump shots that happened to go in from mostly Bub Carrington. So it wasn't like the Hawks didn't pick it up a little bit throughout the course of the game. So overall, the Wizards are the worst offensive team in the league by the numbers this year. that was the case in this game. They are pretty bad, but Atlanta did their job defensively. It was more of like I thought they were kind of like average defensively, even though the numbers were better than that. And offensively, they were really good at times, especially in that third quarter. Kind of a slow start, but in the middle of the game, the Hawks blew it open. They won the second quarter and the third quarter by a combined 25 points. And that's the game right there. And we'll get into all of what transpired, by the way, in that stretch later on in this podcast. Plus, I will dive into the player evaluations, how the new guys looked, how Trae dominated this game, etc. All that's coming up in just one moment. This show is brought to you by SKIMS. When I found out the SKIMS are actually making underwear for men, I was intrigued by that. I've heard a lot about their quality from friends and family along the way, and I had to give it a try. Let me tell you, live to the hype for sure. Many people have issues with their underwear, from fit to comfort, just finding the right style for what they want, and SKIMS changed all of that. Their men's line offers something for everyone, from boxer briefs to classic briefs, all designed for the perfect balance of comfort and style. For example, their stretch 5-inch boxer briefs have rave reviews as well. They're perfect for the active lifestyle that move with you, never lose their shape, and they stay in place all day long. Whether you're working out or just running errands, they're the most comfortable and reliable underwear available anywhere on the market. Plus, the lightweight material feels absolutely amazing. In any situation, shop SKIMS Mens at skims.com/lockedonnba and also in SKIMS stores. And also, when you get there, let them know that we sent you to them. After placing the order, select podcast in the survey and select our show and the drop-down menu that actually follows that. And by the way, if you're looking for the perfect gift for Valentine's Day for yourself or for your Valentine, SKIMS just launched their best Valentine shop ever. It's available in sizes for women, men, kids, and even pets. One more time, the place to go is skims.com/lockedonnba. All right, and to the way this game unfolded, first things first, the starting lineup was a bit of a thing of intrigue in this game. Georges Niang got the start at power forward, which I think I was the first person to report publicly. I was a little bit surprised that Niang started. Not shocked because of the situation at power forward right now for the Hawks without Jalen Johnson, but a little bit surprised. But I then found out about a minute later that Clint Capella was going to be inactive for this game. And when I found that out, it made a lot more sense to me that they started Niang. And why am I saying that? Well, number one, no slight to either player, who I like both of them. Georges Niang and Larry Nance is not a great partnership at the 4 and the 5 because of their defensive shortcomings. Nance is not a great rim protector / anchor at center at this point in his career. He is kind of small, etc. Much more of an offense, floor spacer. There's value there. I like Larry a lot. Not a great defensive anchor. And then Georges Niang knows how to play defense. Like, he'll get in the right places, but he is a limited athlete for sure. Like, not the most long and rangy guy, and not a great athlete overall, vertically, just twitchy stuff. So those two together, not my favorite thing. And the Hawks did that very rarely in this game. I think Quinn probably knows they don't want to play a lot of Niang and Nance together. One thing I want to at least note about Capella, by the way, while we're here, I don't know exactly what the situation is about Capella. From what I saw, what I could gather, Quinn was not asked about Clint tonight in DC. So hopefully there'll be some clarity about that in the near future. What I do know is the following. He was inactive for the game, not in uniform. He was on the bench with the Hawks, and they did not have an injury listing. Now, that's what I know about Capella. What I would guess, this is different than what I know, what I would guess is he hasn't played in about 2 weeks, and he was away from the team for part of that, and I'm not sure how much conditioning he was in. He's not been playing a ton of basketball, I don't think. My best guess is they might just think they need a practice for Clint or a couple days to get ready physically to play again. That is a guess on my part. We'll see if he's able to go on Monday. In the meantime, though, he's on the bench. He seems to be engaged. You can see him on TV. He's in the huddles talking to guys. He's there, but he did not play in this game. Anyway, the Hawks actually had kind of a slow start. Quinn actually chalked it up post-game to Washington's tempo, which I think is right. They were playing fast out of the gate on a back-to-back for both teams. And the Hawks actually missed their first 4 shots. They were 4 of 13 from the field to begin this one. They did lead it late despite that, because Washington was also pretty bad offensively, but that was noteworthy to say the least. Rotation-wise, like I said, the 4 kind of core starters right now are obviously Trae, Dyson, Risache, and Okongwu at center. It was Niang as the 5th starter, and the Hawks played 9 guys in this game. Only 9 guys, which is notable, because that means that 3 guys, plus Capella, who was inactive, but 3 guys who have been playing regularly in recent days did not play in this one. Don Barlow, Garrison Matthews, who had not missed a game for any reason since mid-December, basically, did not play in this one. And then Keaton Wallace was also DNP, because they went with the combination of Caris LeVert and Dice Daniels as the quote-unquote backup point guards in this one. That's not shocking to me. I did say on the pods the last couple of days that I thought Caris might be playing some point guard at some point. And the Hawks did go a long period of time earlier this year with Keaton available where they just kind of chose to go with a combination of Dyson and Veit because I think those guys are just better than Keaton Wallace. Keaton is more of a point guard than those guys are, but Caris LeVert is considerably better overall than Keaton. So is Terance Mann, for instance. So that might happen moving forward. We will see on that front. But it was Mann coming in second. LeVert was the first sub off the bench. They did play the three guys together a little bit, not that much in this one. Then Veit Krejci was the ninth man for Atlanta in this game. And by the way, when you throw Capella in, I assume it'll probably be in Nance's place for the most part, but then you could get some Nance power 4 minutes. TBD on that. The Hawks do have much improved depth, a point that I was making quite a bit. Not saying that changes everything with the transactions the way they went down. As I said on the show literally yesterday, I would not have personally done the 2 trades that the Hawks did, but they did get deeper at the very least in the short term, and that was kind of on display here when you start to look at like who didn't play, and it was still like a relatively deep situation for the Hawks. Not a bad place to be if you're Atlanta. Oh, last thing on the rotation. I forgot to say this earlier. I know people are mad about Mo Gay not playing. I even tried to say this last night on the show to get ahead of it a little bit, and then I wrote about it today on Patreon. I tweeted about it. I got on Blue Sky about it. The reason Mo Gay did not play today was that it would have been his 3rd game in 3 days in 3 cities. And generally speaking, they're not going to ask anyone, especially a young guy with a well-documented injury history, to play 3 games in 3 days. So they sent Mo and Daquan Plowden to the G League. Mo did not play in the G League tonight. They had a game today. Plowden played. Mo did not. The real test is whether Mo goes to Orlando. The Hawks play Orlando on Monday. TBD on that. But if you were really like, I saw people like in a rage about Mo not playing tonight. That is why. He was not with the team. He was never going to play three games in a row in 3 days because no one ever does that. And then we'll see what happens as soon as Monday, and then we'll talk about that again if we need to at that time. Okay, back to the game. The Wizards had their second biggest run of the game, actually, early on, a 14-4 push, but the Hawks down by 6 points. Defensively, it was decent early on, but the Hawks had 14 points on their first 21 possessions of this game, which sounds crazy now because they were able to score so much after that, but they had a very slow start offensively. They did have a nice run after that, but they couldn't make a 2 early on in this game, as I sort of alluded to earlier. Caris LeVert had 4 fouls in his first 9 minutes of action. That's a lot for anyone. It was kind of funny. There were lots of jokes about him replacing Hunter as the guy who's getting bad whistles from officials. That made me laugh a little bit. But the crazy thing is here, LeVert had 5 fouls in the game in 15 minutes. Caris LeVert averages 1.3 fouls per game. He had 5 in 15 minutes tonight. So maybe that was a little bit of just bad luck, maybe a little bit of the scheme weirdness, all of that, but it was kind of funny that happened right out of the gate for him. But the Hawks did close the first half really well, 14-2 run in about a 2-minute period. Trae accounted for all 14 of those points. He scored 12 of them and then assisted on the other bucket. He was absolutely dominant in that stretch, and the Hawks were up by 5 at halftime despite shooting poorly from 2-point range the entire half, basically. The third quarter was a lot of fun. If you didn't see it, I recommend watching it just for the celebrations, basically. But the Hawks scored 41 points in the third, and it was a barrage right away. Atlanta hit 5 threes in the first 3.5 minutes of the third quarter. 4 of them came from Georges Niang in a row. Niang hit 4 threes, 12 points in less than 2 minutes. And by the way, he can do that. This is the 10th time in Niang's career that he hit 4 threes in a quarter. So he's capable of doing this. I said this on the show this week already, but if you are not familiar with his work or didn't see him play or whatever, Niang's number one positive trait is that he's a really like a legitimately great shooter. He's not Steph Curry. He's not, old school Kyle Korver. But Georges Niang is a career 40% 3-point shooter on more than 2,000 NBA attempts. And by the way, it's not fluky. It's every year. If you look at his stat, he shoots 40% every year. He has one season sub 40%, and it was like 38%. Like, he is a bomber. He can really shoot it, and that was the case in that spot. So I was actually glad that happened just for people to see it in live and in color. Obviously, he won't always shoot 4 of 7 like he did tonight, but he's a real shooter, and that was definitely the case there. They scored 25 points in 6 minutes or so. And by the way, Ricochet was really good at stretch too. He had 3 buckets, including a very, very pretty double pivot move that he seems to like doing kind of in that mid-post area. He's very crafty in that range. They weren't quite as dominant as that, the rest of the quarter, but Trae had a big quarter, had 7 assists in the third overall, and Atlanta went up by 21 points after that 41-point barrage. And look, I won't say it was over. It wasn't. In fact, I clearly said it was not over because this game got down to a 7-point margin. But the real work happened in the third quarter and at the end of the first half. Now, in the fourth, it was dicey a little bit. It's a 19-4 run by the Wizards to get within 8. Now, they hit 3 straight jumpers in the middle of that run to force a timeout. Bub Carrington got really hot for a minute, and then the Hawks came out of the timeout and had 4 straight empty trips on offense. So it was kind of spiraling a little bit there. I wasn't necessarily worried as the Hawks, but at the same time, it wasn't pretty. They stayed a little bit longer than I thought they probably should have with Larry Nance in particular in that run, but they were able to bail themselves out of it. It was never as close. Never closer than 7, and never felt like a super in doubt. I think Trae, the dagger that kind of came from Trae was with like 4 minutes to go. Basically, he hit this reverse layup to kind of put it away, in my opinion, and that was kind of the end of that. So we'll leave it there for now. But generally speaking, the Hawks were quite good in this game overall. They still have a limited roster. The Wizards are bad. All that stuff is relevant. But for the first game with 3 new pieces, it was probably as good as they possibly could have projected it to be. Obviously, you want to win by 30 every night if you can. But given the weirdness there, a back-to-back with travel, and a tough one, by the way, going to Atlanta to D.C., I'm told by people in the league, is not an easy back-to-back at all. D.C. is not close to the airport, all these things. And to go up there, and yeah, again, Wizards are bad. I understand that. But a taking care of business win, and one that certainly cannot be taken for granted at this point in time if you are the Hawks. All right, more to come on the player evaluations and more. But first, a word from our partners on the show. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better way to get on the action than at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And with FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game. So even if you actually miss the opening tip-off or you want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action at FanDuel. The live betting feature keeps every moment of the game really exciting for you. If you're looking for bigger payouts, you actually combine your bets together for your live bets in a same-game parlay. Plus, they have offerings like over-unders, point spreads, money lines, player props and game props, and so much more. The app at FanDuel is really safe and secure as well. They cover the entire range of sports. That includes the NBA, football stuff, MLB, WNBA, hockey, golf, tennis, soccer, auto racing, when it comes to F1, NASCAR, etc., boxing, MMA, and so much more. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly at FanDuel. Right now, if you're a new customer at FanDuel, get $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com, join up today. And one more time, that's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, before we dive into the 9 guys who did play in this game for Atlanta, one piece of housekeeping. The Hawks did officially waive Bones Hyland today. Now, that was an absolute lock based on what I had already been hearing and then what was confirmed by Landry Fields on Friday, basically from the podium. But now that's been official. People keep asking me why that is. I don't know the official. This is my speculation that's informed. I think the Hawks just didn't want to bring him in the locker room. Basically, he never came. He was only part of the deal because of salary matching. They were not proactively trying to acquire Bones Hyland. I think it is a little bit damning of Bones Hyland, as I think John Hollinger pointed out this week at the Athletic, that a team that is kind of point guard needy in some respects did not want to take a look at Bones Hyland. But at the same time, and look, I've never covered him, so this is just secondhand stuff. Bones' reputation in the league is not great necessarily. Nothing like super nefarious, but a couple of teams have kind of given up on him for locker room reasons or cultural reasons, or whatever you want to say. And when you combine that with the fact that he just hasn't been that good in the NBA, that's a tough combination. So I don't know Bones. Like, I'm not trying to disparage anybody. That's just kind of what's been in the ether in the last couple of days. And if the guy is like proven to be really, really awesome, you can kind of deal with that a little bit more, take more chances. But when you're already going to be like the 14th guy on the team, you probably don't want to bring that guy in if you are an organization like, look, I've made fun of it plenty, but the Hawks do actually kind of believe the Hawks DNA culture stuff that they say out loud. It's not only just like stuff that you say. They do actually believe that. So anyway, also, he's not as good as like Caris LeVert. He's not as good as Terance Mann. Yeah, he might be better than Keaton Wallace, maybe. But the fact that it's a maybe kind of tells you where he is on the spectrum. All right. With that said, to the guys who did play in this game, Caris LeVert played the least because of the foul trouble. 5 fouls, 15 minutes, 9 points, 3 rebounds, and 2 of 6 from the floor, I should say. 1 of 2 on twos, 1 of 4 on threes, 4-4 at the line. He was a little bit shaky, I thought, but I think Caris is a proven entity. Defensively, he was a little bit just like handsy in this game, I guess. But I thought he was fine, generally speaking, just kind of overly foul-y, but nothing to worry about on that front. I will say this about all 3 guys, and I said this during the game as well. I would just encourage everyone to not make like big sweeping evaluations of the 3 new players based on a game or 2 or 3, but especially not the first game when, again, they have not practiced at all with the team. Relevant data point there, I would say. Speaking of which, Terance Mann, 25 minutes, 4 points, 3 assists, a rebound, 1 turnover. He took 1 really bad like mid-ranger that I think Quinn will probably tell him not to do more moving forward. Mann is the kind of guy that the Hawks are going to have to kind of coach as they have been with everybody from Dyson to Ricochet to Don Barlow to Mo Gay to be aggressive and just take your shots. If you're open from 3, just shoot it. He's not a great shooter, but he can make shots, and Quinn would rather you just shoot it. And I think that's going to be a message that he will get. But you saw the little things that like guys that love the NBA like about Terance Mann. He pushes tempo. He really guards. He's a pretty good passer. The little things. I like what I saw from Mann. It was mostly just spotty, but he was fine in this game in 25 minutes. Larry Nance, 22 minutes, 14 points, 6 rebounds for Larry. Had a block. He was 4 of 5 on twos, 2 of 6 from 3. I think defensively he was a little shaky in this one, but nothing bad. I thought he played fine. A couple of finishes around the rim that were actually quite nice, I thought, from Larry. Decent passing game. I thought he was fine. He played a little bit longer than he probably should have in the fourth as it got tight, but he was okay, rock solid in this game, and also had a funny moment post-game with Tabitha Turner on the air where he and Tab were having fun in the interview and talking about headbands, and it was a fun one if you missed that. I'm sure it'll be on social media somewhere. Vit Krejci, 32 minutes off the bench. He was plus 12 in the game, 12 points, 8 rebounds, and 7 assists. Vit was well-rounded in this one. Took 0 2-point shots, but was 4 of 8 from 3. That's totally fine. I thought Vit played well in this game, defended actively, had a steal and 2 blocks, just was good. I thought Vit was really good in this game. Nice to see him have a nice one here. To the starters, Okongwu had a kind of weird game, 6 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists, had a steal and a block, and was plus 15 in the game. He was not his best. I don't think he was terrible, but he was just kind of out of it a little bit, kind of passive. A couple nice passes, I will say. He was a couple of high post, pivot point, drop off passes to cutters. I've loved that development from Okongwu the last couple of weeks and months as he's been more in that role. But the rest of his game was just kind of middling. It was definitely below average for him, but he wasn't terrible. Just didn't have a ton of great action, but he was better defensively than Nance was, and they kind of had to have him close out the game at the end. Zachary Ricochet, 18 points in 24 minutes. He was 6 of 9 on twos, 2 of 3 from 3. I am starting to buy in more and more to Ricochet. I liked him the whole season. He's doing all the little things that you want defensively. He plays above his age, as I've said many times, but it's definitely true. He plays like a veteran in a lot of ways here. But 2 relevant data points here. Since Christmas, so 6 weeks now, basically, he's shooting 38.5% from 3. Now, that's not a huge sample, but he has balanced out his very slow start, which definitely happened from 3-point range, with a good shooting stretch now for a decent amount of time. Now, finding the real baseline for Ricochet's 3-point shooting is going to be very important. The Hawks firmly believe he will be a high-end shooter. Not a elite one maybe, but certainly a guy that has to be guarded and shoots in the high 30s and with real volume. We'll see, but that's a big question for his future. But in the meantime, he's been shooting the ball well for a decent period of time now, which is nice to see. So I would encourage people to look a little bit beyond the season-long numbers because they've kind of come up steadily since the very slow start as a shooter. And the second thing is he has one turnover in the last 6 games. That's 148 minutes with 1 turnover. Part of that is that he is not a huge usage guy, but man, that's still very impressive for a rookie to be playing that much. He's taking shots, he's had the ball some, to not make mistakes like that, to not turn the ball over. Not a small thing. That's very, very encouraging, at least to me. And he's always making the right decisions, which I like about Ricochet. Georges Niang, it was mostly in about 4 minutes, but he had 16 points in the game, was plus 18, did have 3 steals. I said this during the game, and even a little bit earlier. Niang's defense is going to be interesting to follow because it's not going to always look good. He's not a great athlete, but he is in the right places. I've asked around in Cleveland, and I've watched him, of course, dating back to Utah. He's the one guy of the three that's played for Quinn, so he kind of knew more of what you'd expect probably than LeVert and Mann did. But Niang is a good space defender. Like he knows where to be. It's just that he can't always physically make the plays, but he bothered some shots in this game. He got deflections, 3 steals, 6 rebounds. Like he did a good job, I thought, and then made the 4 threes as well on top of that. It won't always look pretty, and people are going to have a split on him, I'm sure. I can already see it coming. If you want athleticism, he's not going to be that, but he does do a lot of things well. He's physical. He can shoot it and play well in this game. Dyson Daniels had kind of a down game on offense in this one, 11 points on 13 shots. He's probably due for that. He's been really good lately with his shooting, but 9 rebounds, actually to lead the team, 4 assists, 3 blocks for Dyson in this game, and 1 steal. His steal streak remains. It's like 23 games, I think, at this point in time. He's been getting steals like they're going out of style. And yeah, he's been playing great for a long time. No surprise there. But offensively, kind of down game for Dyson, but certainly he was still a positive factor in the game. And then Trae Young, 35 points, 14 assists, plus 36 in the game. He was 8 of 12 on 2s, 5 of 14 on 3s, 4 at the free throw line, 63% true shooting. That's obviously really, really good. This is his 87th career game with at least 30 points and 10 assists. Now, that's a lot of numbers. I get that. But just here's the simple play. That's the 4th most of all time. 4th most of all time. The 3 guys ahead of him are obviously Hall of Famers. Trae is 26 years old, so he's probably going to have a lot more of these. And look, it doesn't mean that on its own that you're the greatest player of all time. It doesn't mean that. But it does mean that you have a lot of ways to beat other teams. The passing, the scoring, he was very, very good in this game and drove a lot of success. And obviously the plus minus is kind of fluky, ridiculous with the plus 36, but he was awesome. He was dominant in the entire game, and a big reason why the Hawks were able to get their 2nd straight win in about a 24-hour period. All right, that's all I have on this game. The Hawks do play again on Monday. They will have a day off, at least with travel, on Sunday because they will just play the back-to-back. This is a very odd trip geographically for Atlanta. So they had a home game on Friday. They played tonight in D.C. on Saturday. Now they go to Orlando, which is south of Atlanta, but south of D.C. especially. And then they go to New York on Wednesday. So they go up, down, and then back up. Just kind of strange. I'm not sure who built the schedule out there, but not the greatest job done overall. Lots of things to look at between now and Monday. Will Mo Gay be there? Will Clint Capella be in uniform? We'll see. Obviously, hopefully a walkthrough or a practice for the new guys to get a little bit more up to speed on what's going on with the Hawks. But certainly back-to-back wins is a good way to do that. A couple of challenging games for sure to end the first quote-unquote half. And I use the if you're not watching on YouTube, I use the giant air quotes there because the All-Star break is not in the middle of the season. The All-Star break is 2/3 of the way through the season. So keep that in mind. But they do have a break coming. The Hawks don't play at home again for like 12 more days, so keep that in mind. But a good win here, even though it was a taking care of business win. You still have to get those. And the Hawks now, by the way, with this victory, are back to 25-28 on the year. And in the standings, things are looking better than they were. I mean, they're 2.5 games now clear of Chicago. They're only a half game behind Orlando, who they play on Monday. They're only a game and a half out of 6th in the East right now. And they're also 4 full games ahead of Philadelphia, who's in 11th. So a good weekend for that and a weekend sweep for Atlanta on the whole. Please subscribe to this podcast anywhere you find your podcasts. We are on Apple, we're on Spotify, we're on Amazon Music, Overcast, all those places. We're also on YouTube, so please check us out there as well and like this video as you're watching it. If you are a YouTube watcher primarily, shouts to you. Also, do me a favor, if you would, and subscribe and auto download on Apple or Spotify. Pick an audio platform or two. Help us out there too. Definitely appreciate that. It can't hurt at this point in time. Also, leave comments if you want to on YouTube. Also, leave ratings and reviews on the audio platforms. And crucially, tell your friends about the show. Follow us on Twitter/X at Locked On Hawks. Follow me at BT Rowland. I'm also on Blue Sky at BT Rowland. You can also find my non-podcast work from extra audio to writing, etc. at patreon.com/BT Rowland. All right, everybody. I might have some bonus content. We'll see between now and Monday, but at the very least, I'll be back with another show, as I always do, after the game on Monday. We'll see you all next time.